I think I will never forget seeing the film in that atmosphere. It really was for me a once in a lifetime experience, I am sure. Except I'm going to come back. Because this is absolutely my favourite festival I have ever been to. I mean it, really. It's so beautiful.
Good morning, good morning. Good morning and welcome for being so numerous. This is good for the heart. And it is a great pleasure indeed to introduce this conversation with Emma Thompson and Maya Hoffman, our beloved president. And I wanted that she could be here so that we could all share this moment of love and introduce the conversation with Emma Thompson. The conversation will be moderated by Manlio Gomarasca. So enjoy the conversation, and I just want to add, thank you again, Emma, for being with us. This is a wonderful gift. We will cherish it for years to come, and have a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Emma. It's such a pleasure and an honor to have you, really. And we discovered that you speak also Italian.
Not today.
Absolutely not today.
Oh, non ho potuto dormire. I was so excited. Yesterday was so overwhelming. So I'm really... I can't speak Italian.
Don't worry, we can speak in English.
Can I speak in English? Is it okay? You all are so brilliant. Okay, good.
So how did it feel to be in front of such a large audience yesterday in the piazza?
Well, it's funny, you don't expect it. Before we came, I thought, oh gosh, I looked at all the pictures of the piazza and I thought, I hope it's not, I hope it's full. Maybe it won't be. Perhaps it'll be a bit thin. But it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Whoever turns up, it'll be wonderful. When I came out and saw everybody, I nearly had an aneurysm. I was absolutely astonished and so proud and so happy. And it was such a beautiful feeling. And then sitting there watching the film on that amazing screen and then looking up at the stars and down again, especially in the outdoor sequences. Yeah. I think I will never forget seeing the film in that atmosphere. It really was for me a once in a lifetime experience, I am sure. Except I'm going to come back. Because this is absolutely my favourite festival I have ever been to. I mean it, really. It's so beautiful.
So let's start talking about the movie you presented here in Locarno, Dead of Winter. It's a very special movie because it's an interesting mix between a pure action thriller but also a more intimate drama. What did intrigue you about the story?
Well, it was the script. It was the script about this woman who, every time I turned the page, I realised it was action and all of that, and I haven't really ever done that before. But every time I turned the page, she did something really surprising, like, turning on the water and knowing that the things would freeze, and that she knew how to make a hole in the ice. She had this life that I just didn't know about. I loved the fact that she got on with it without really thinking about it. She was the most wonderfully inspiring, heroic person, and yet she was a completely ordinary woman. And I think that most women are like that, actually. Aren't we? I mean, get on with it. We're all great, brave heroines because we have to be. We've got no choice. We live in a patriarchy. So, you know, I mean, not to get too political about it, but most of the women I know are incredibly heroic. But we don't often see their stories. And, you know, the fact that she was old and she was grieving, you know, I'd never seen that before. I'd never seen this before. And actually, to me, it's not really a pure action thriller. It's actually a love story. Yeah, yes. You know.
It's true, totally true. But there is a lot of action scene in the movie, and most of them outside in the snow. What kind of physical preparation you go through?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, I did a lot of exercise, you know, but you can't really prepare yourself for the cold. So we went there. I went there a month early to Finland, and it was minus 27 degrees, you know. And so you go out into that cold, and I mean, I'm English, so I'm used to the cold, but you go out into that, and it's like some big animal takes you in its mouth and goes, "Ang!" And you go, oh, I see. This is cold. And we were 60 kilometers away from the Russian border. You know, the Finns are not fond of the Russians because the Russians have invaded Finland many, many times. So there's this sense of threat, imminent threat all the time. And all the Finns, you know, they're they're quite close, but they're very, very practical and wonderful people. And so they were there looking after us. But we were in the middle of nowhere. And that lake, I tell you, that was one of the most beautiful places I've ever filmed. Even when I was crawling around on it doing the fight sequence and my knees were bleeding and I was in such pain, but I kept on stopping and looking at this frozen water and thinking, I'm so lucky to be here. So Brian and I used to say that it was as much of a filming experience as just a real life experience. We all really put ourselves through it. And we had to go and get into the lake, the frozen lake. So we went into the sauna, the Finnish sauna, you know, they all take saunas there, and get very hot, and then walk across the ice and get into the lake. And you get into it and think, well, I'm going to die. I'm literally going to die. And you build up from sort of 10 seconds to 15 seconds. You have to build it up and build it up. So it was a lot of preparation, a lot. And then I had to learn how to hold my breath to do the drowning sequences, you know. Yeah, that really scared me.
And in the movie you work with your daughter, Gaia Wise, and she play a younger version of you. So did you discuss the character together?
Yeah, we did. We went on long walks together and we talked about what Carl and Barb would have eaten. You know, what games they might have played, what books they might have read, what conversations. We talked about how they might have argued. We talked about everything to do with what they might have been. So in a sense, we created her together. You know, she's a composite. And that was such a privilege, you know, and really unforgettable thing for us to do. And she was in Finland all the time. Yeah. So, yeah, it was amazing.
Talking about family, you came from a family of artists. Your father was a famous writer, your mother a well-known actress, and now you're a complete artist yourself. You are both an actress and a writer. How much your parents' example influenced your choice?
Well, I didn't want to be an actor when I was young. No, I didn't. It seemed quite a precarious job. In fact, at my school at one point, a hospital administrator came to talk to us, and I thought, oh, that would be a good job. And I think it was because she had very nice shoes. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. And then I became a comedian. I did stand-up comedy for political events, actually, when I was a young woman, for Argentina and Chile, because the dictatorships were in full flood. For CND, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. I did a lot of political rallies. I did jokes about Margaret Thatcher, because she was there at the time. And herpes, if you recall that. Do you know what I mean? Can you translate it? No. Okay, it's a simplex thing that you get through unprotected sex. Okay, I'm actually worried about having brought this up now. Wait, somebody must know what it is. And it was jokes, that because everybody had it at the time. And I used to say that herpes and Margaret Thatcher were both very difficult to get rid of. Which is a joke that still stands to this day. I'm astonished. And so I wanted to be a comedian. And I was a comedian. I earned my living doing comedy. And on my 25th birthday, I went and did stand-up comedy, and I earned £60 in cash. And that was my best money I ever earned, because it was just me and a microphone and some words that I had written. And then after that, I got a job acting accidentally. And so that was very accidental. I never intended to do it. Perhaps that's rather good. Do you know what I mean? I never thought, oh, I'd like to make films. I never imagined I would make films.
So what do you consider a turning point of your career in the really beginning, when you discover now and become a real actress?
I don't know. I think... Okay, so when I was a comedian, I wrote a television series, which was a series of sketches, you know, comedy sketches. And one of the sketches was about a woman who comes home, she's Victorian, she comes home to see her mother. And she's asking her mother about a problem she's got with her husband, who appears to have a small creature attached to his body. And she doesn't know what it is. And he is trying to sort of explain it to her, and she's come to talk to her mother about it. And of course, he's talking about his penis, and she has no education at all. She doesn't know what sex is. It's about sexual ignorance, but it's funny. So the producer of Sense and Sensibility saw this sketch and thought, this woman can adapt Jane Austen. So that I think is a very interesting sort of connection. I wrote a comedy sketch about somebody's very unfortunate sex life, and that led to Sense and Sensibility. That's so weird. So yeah, that was a turning point.
Yeah, I think so. I would like to talk about two amazing performances you made into James Ivory movie, Our Dance and The Remains of the Day. In the first one, you are a woman in love with a real estate that she feels she belongs. And in the other one, you are in love with a butler that is incapable to express his feeling. What can you tell me about these two experiences? Because the movie are really amazing. I'm a huge fan.
Well, those films, if you've seen them, I don't know whether you've seen them, but anyway, if you have seen them, my luck was I got to work with Anthony Hopkins twice. And he was a great teacher, and he was a wonderful person to work with. The scripts were amazing. Margaret Schlegel, the character of Margaret Schlegel, is the only time I've ever written to a director and said, I really know how to play this woman. Because she was like all of the early feminist teachers and women who fought for education for women. You know, we forget. What can I do to stop that noise? Okay, good. We forget that our being educated is really very recent. You know, can you imagine not having access to education? So Margaret, who was highly educated, was fighting for this. There she was at the turn of the 20th century, and looking into the future and thinking, oh my goodness, soon we'll have equal pay. How wrong she was. Isn't it disappointing? And then with Remains of the Day, my connection with that was because my grandmother went into service as a servant when she was 13. She also had no education, nor indeed did my father. And when she went to work, it was at a time during the First World War. And this is an interesting story, actually. She went to work for a childless couple. They had no children. And when the Zeppelins came over, the wife would leave, saying she was scared, and she would go and stay with her mother. And my grandmother was raped by her employer, became pregnant, kept the child, and then they discovered it had happened to lots of other young servant girls because that was a way of sort of forced surrogate motherhood. So, you know, in our families, we have these ancient histories, intergenerational traumas. And that woman, my grandmother, really informed, her experience really informed my creation of Miss Kenton. You know, someone who can't really, it's so hard for them to find a life of their own. It's so deformed service of that kind. And my grandmother she was never really happy or fulfilled. So yeah, they both have very strong, powerful connections to my ancestors. Interesting, eh?
And talking about great woman, we can talk about your character in The Name of the Father. She's really the one that makes the difference. So can you tell me something about her? She's a real person, and you really portray in an amazing way.
So that character is based on a woman called Gareth Pearce, who is now in her 80s and still fighting, still acting for miscarriages of justice. She's absolutely extraordinary. And I can't say I got to know her well, because she was a really private person, but my admiration for her knew no bounds. She was a solicitor, don't forget, and Jim Sheridan kind of created a barrister role for her so that the story could be told well. But there was an odd thing that happened when Daniel Day-Lewis and I were coming out of the courtroom. There was a crowd scene, and I got crushed against a car, and I got hurt on my finger here. And I have a little star-shaped scar on that finger, and Gareth has the same scar on the same finger. And I thought that was very odd. But she and I'd known her because when I was doing political comedy, she was often there. She was often fighting for all of these people who had come over, having been tortured in all these regimes. So I suppose she was part of my political upbringing, you know? Amazing woman.
And because of that character, and also because of the Remain of the Day, that year you were nominated for 2 Oscars in the same ceremony. One like Best Supporting Actor and like Best Actor. I mean, it's kind of a record, no?
I think it has happened before, and don't forget I didn't win for either of them.
Yeah. But 6 happened, in fact.
You know, it doesn't really matter.
But then you start your American career, and you work in a lot of American movies, like Junior, like Primary Color. And what kind of difference you notice between working in Hollywood versus England, for example?
Well, the Hollywood industry at that time, I think, was very different to what it is now. The big difference is that I'm a very collegiate person, so I like to know my crew. I like to know the people who are behind the camera. I want to know their names, their faces. I want to know about their families. I want to know what's going on with them, because then I can make them disappear when I'm working. You know, it's very odd, that, but if I'm surrounded by strangers, I can't forget them. In America, there's a real boundary between actors and crew, and it wasn't something that I was used to or that I particularly enjoyed. So I much preferred working in Europe, in England and Scotland and Europe. Although it has to be said, oh my God, Primary Colours, when we did that, if you remember the Monica Lewinsky scandal, poor Monica, that happened while we were making Primary Colours. Wow. So we suddenly all sat there with John Travolta, me, Mike Nichols and Elaine May, going, what are we going to do? I mean, it's happening. The thing that we're making a film about is happening in real life. So that was a very strange part, right in the center of American history at that time. That's amazing. It feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it? Oh, if only we could just have a nice sex scandal and not all this stuff. God, you know, please. Oh, and this is a good story. I was in my trailer one day while we were making that movie, and the phone rang, and it was Donald Trump. And I didn't know the number of the phone. No one had rung me on it before. And I said, hello? And he said, hi, it's Donald Trump here. And I thought it was a joke. And then I said, how can I help you? Thinking maybe he needed directions for somewhere. And then he said, you know, I'd love you to come and stay at one of my beautiful places. Maybe we could have dinner. And I said, well, that's very sweet. Thank you so much. I'll get back to you. And then I realized that on that day, my decree nisi, you know, the final papers of my divorce had come through. And I thought, I bet he's got people on looking for suitable people he could take out on his arm, you know, divorcees, a nice divorcee. That's what he was looking for. And he found the number in my trailer. I mean, that's stalking. Anyway, but I could have gone on a date with Donald Trump and then I would have a story to tell. I could have changed the course of American history. No, not.
I think that Sense and Sensibility is a very important movie for you, right? Not only because you starred in it, but also because you wrote it. And why the creative process took so many years to make the movie?
A screenplay is a very interesting thing. So when Lindsay asked me to write it, I said, well, I don't know how to write a screenplay. So she said, well, ask around. So I went to Ruth Prover-Jabvala, who'd adapted Howard's End and The Remains of the Day, and she said, and if any of you are thinking of adapting, this is what you do. You adapt the whole book. You dramatize every single scene because you don't know which ones are going to work and which ones are not going to work. And weirdly, some of the most dramatic scenes in the books are not dramatic on film. And some of the least dramatic scenes are very dramatic on film. It was fascinating to me, that. So I wrote a screenplay that was 400 pages long, obviously, and they need to be 100 pages long, and then started to, you know, take out the stuff that didn't work, and then started to add things that we needed because some characters just disappear, and you have to find a way of bringing them back. You have to kind of find a way of... So it takes a long, long time. It took 5 years to write, and you get a lot of notes, and then you get useful notes like Sidney Pollack. You remember him, that wonderful producer. He produced it, one of the producers, and he said to me, you know what, I'm a Jew from Indiana. I'm dumb. I don't know anything. Why can't they just go, like, get a job? And I thought that's a really good question. Why couldn't they just go and work? Because there were no jobs for women in that situation. You know, she could have become a governess, which Jane Austen writes about in Persuasion, which was not a very nice job because you were neither the family nor the servants. You were in between and often abused. So, again, you know, the whole history of female captivity and repression exists in those moments, although, of course, it's very funny and it's very biting. But all screenplays take a long time. Nanny McPhee took 9 years. So it's just one of those things, and you keep doing it over and over again. I wrote a version of Sense and Sensibility in Italy when we were shooting Much Ado About Nothing. And I got notes back from Lindsay saying, this is just a little too warm and Italian. I had to chuck the whole thing out because I'd been influenced by my surroundings, you know. It's a painful process, but once you get those actors saying the words you've been working on for all those years, it is a fantastic experience, really fantastic. And of course, I met my husband, and we had our daughter. So, yeah, it's a very important part of my life.
And the movie is directed, it's the first American feature directed by the Taiwanese director Ang Lee. That was also an interesting choice. And I was working with Ang Lee.
Oh, well, it was so wonderful. We chose him because he had just brought out a film called Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. And it was about two sisters. It was about family. And in one of the scenes, one of the women says to the other in Taiwanese, "What do you know of my heart?" And that's what Eleanor says to Marianne in one of our scenes. And it was for that, it was the reason, he was funny, but he also really understood about family, and he understood about sisters. But he didn't speak English at the time. So that was interesting. And so the first time we all got on set, me and Hugh Grant did a scene, and Ang's very quiet, and he stands there with his hand clamped to his cheek, looking thoughtful and inscrutable. And we did our scene, and then at the end of it, Hugh and I said, can we do it again? Can we do it? We want to do it from the other side of the... And he was terribly shocked, because in Taiwan, the actors never question the director. It is not collaborative. Director is God, and the actors do what they're told. So he had to go and lie down. He was just so shocked. So we passed notes under each other's doors during the night saying, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, I'll do whatever you want. And then he got used to it, and he got to enjoy it. But he was very funny about the fact that he smoked at the time. He said, you know, if we were in Taiwan or in China, there would be someone there holding an ashtray. I said, well, I'm not holding a fucking ashtray. Bang. But he was the most wonderful, wonderful, creative collaborator, and one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. I love him.
I would like to talk about two HBO series you starred in. One is The Wit by Mike Nichols, that is so moving. Yeah, the movie is amazing. Can you tell me something about that?
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Wit is a play by Margaret Edson. She worked in a cancer unit for 2 years, and what she was observing was the behavior of the tertiary, the high consultants, with their cancer patients, and particularly with cancer patients who were undergoing new treatments, you know, experimental treatments, which my character goes through. Of course, the play is about a character who is so repressed, so emotionally damaged, that she uses the poetry of one of our great, august and difficult poets, John Donne, to control everything in her life. But of course, when it comes to it, she can't control her pain, she can't control her dying. There's nothing she can do. She has to give in, and there's something very beautiful about seeing her able to do that. We don't talk about death very much, and we're very bad at accepting these things. We don't discuss our grief very easily. Certainly we don't in my country. I don't know what it's like here. And so that play really opened that up for us. It was about the cruelty of some aspects of the medical profession, and also about a woman moving towards the place we're all going to go, and letting go of all her defences. And it was an extraordinary thing to play. And Mike Nichols, of course, was an incredible director to work with. What an extraordinary man. You know all his work, you know, from The Graduate onwards. I was so lucky to get to do that with him.
And it's true that you chose the director, in fact. You
did.
proposed Mike Nichols for the movie.
Yes, I did. I thought he would be... Okay, so it was for television. And I thought, well, he's a filmmaker. He might feel a bit, you know, as though that were beneath him, television. But he just had a terrible disaster with a movie. And it had not gone well. So it was a really good time to ask him, because I said, this is a wonderful piece of writing. I think you're really going to like it. And you can make it like a film. We'll pretend it's a film. Anyway, he loved it. He loved it. And we sort of adapted it for the screen together. And we'd already done primary colours. So we had this very close relationship already. And yeah, it was a wonderful experience. And we shot that in England.
And what about Angels in America? You had 3 different roles in that movie. You are the nurse, you are the homeless woman, you are the angel of America, in fact.
Oh, God. Yes. So, Angels in America. Again, you know, an extraordinary play. It's 2 plays. What can I tell you? I mean, I play an angel, so they hung me high up from the rafters with a huge pair of wings on, and my hair had to be blown back at all times. And so all the dust from the studio went up my nose, and I had a continual sinus infection throughout the whole filming of it. But it was worth it, because not only of the writing, but also because of the actors. Again, you know, I was with Meryl Streep, I was with Al Pacino. I couldn't quite believe that. I mean, his performance, the performances are really extraordinary. We shot also here in Italy, we shot in Rome. And the company was very close-knit. No egos to speak of, you know, we just sort of got on with it. But it was a long shoot, 9 months. I can't think of anything else to tell you.
And what about the directors? There are different directors in Angels of America.
No, Mike directed all of it.
Ah, Mike directed all of it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because I understood that there was also another director on it. Also, okay.
No, Mike, just Mike.
Okay. So now that's what 2 amazing series that you made. And then you come back to England and make Love Actually. That is so incredible movie. I want to tell you, your performance when you cry, when you discover that cruel way the infidelity of your husband and you start crying is something that, wow, larger than life. Many compliments for that scenes.
Well, thank you. It's so funny, you know, when the movie came out, Wit had just come out at the same time. And Wit was very serious, you know, it was quite an intellectual movie. And then Love Actually really wasn't. And I remember seeing one after the other, and Hugh Grant coming up to me after Love Actually and saying, "Is that the most psychotic thing we've ever made?" We just thought, we had no idea it would have the life that it has had. And slowly, as the years went by, people would come up to me on public transport and say, "I know what it's like." I think I've touched a nerve. And I think the nerve that I touched is just that we're so used to when, you know, we get a heartbreak, especially women, I think, and especially mothers and fathers, we have to hide it because we don't want people to see it. So really what moves you is not her crying, it's her covering it up afterwards and then tidying the bed and going downstairs and being cheerful. I think that's probably why it's lasted, maybe. But I mean, it honestly is a constant source of astonishment to me that film, not because I like the film very much, but it's weird. It is a little bit weird.
I think the movie is amazing, really.
Good. No, I mean, I don't mean... its longevity, I mean, is a little weird.
So let's talk about a movie called Good Luck to You, Leo Grande.
Oh, yes, let's.
You put it in line for that movie, telling the story of this woman that discovered her sexuality and the orgasm for the first time with a younger gigolo.
Yes. I don't know if he's a gigolo. I mean, he's a proper sex worker. You know, it's his profession. Okay, so this film, which means a lot to me, it's one of my favourites. We made that during COVID in 3 weeks. Yeah. Wow. So Daryl McCormack and I just had to work so hard because there's a lot of words in it. But what I loved was I had never seen it before, ever. I'd never seen that character before, because she's always the one who's making the tea in the kitchen while something important is going on elsewhere, isn't she? Or she's the mother who goes, "Don't go and do the brave thing. Please stay here with me and the children. We need you." You know, she's that woman. She's the woman who doesn't really exist. And suddenly, she was at the centre of this extraordinary act of bravery. She's terrified that she's doing it. I loved her fear. I loved the fact that she instinctively knew that she was missing something very, very important, and that she'd felt it when she was 16, and then what she'd done was all the right things. Beware, my friends, of all the right things. Being a good girl, you know. She did all the right things. She did her exams. She became a teacher. She got married to somebody very steady. She had her children. She did all the right things. She never overshadowed her husband at parties. She never overdrank. She never behaved badly. She was never spontaneous. She did all the right things. And by the time we meet her, she's just depressed and confused. And then she does this extraordinary thing, and she uses some of her money to hire a very much younger man to help her experience things that she really wants, but doesn't even know why or how to achieve them. And one of the things that was very important to me and Katie and our director, Sophie, was that her orgasm, and, you know, believe you me, the conversations I have had about this movie around the world have been extraordinary. Young women saying, I've never had an orgasm. And older gay men saying, this helped me so much with my body image. I mean, everyone had a kind of connection to it. And it was very important to us that she had her orgasm on her own. You know, that it wasn't somehow something that some guy had given her. And it wasn't this achievement. It was this slow coming into being, you know? And for me, this is one of my proudest moments, actually. Because I've never seen that before. And I love that film. I take it around, we talk about it. You know, there's so many things to unpack, isn't there? Our shame about our bodies. And I had to take all my clothes off at the end and just stand in front of a mirror, and not well lit, you know. Like, I was just in light, it was just there, everything. You know, horrible. I mean, that's what one feels, isn't it? You just go, oh, God. Just turn the lights down. But I couldn't do that, and I thought, how am I going to manage it? What can I access? So I went to lots of art galleries, and I looked at pictures of Adam and Eve, because I thought, well, it's something pre-lapsarian, you know, before the fall, before they suddenly realized they were naked, you know, and they're all standing in a very relaxed position, just with one knee bent, not really thinking about it. So I tried to channel that, because it's not about someone going, oh my God, I love my body now. It's not about that. It's about someone having a neutral acceptance, you know, which is as much as certainly I can achieve, but God knows it's hard, because we're surrounded all the time, aren't we, by images that say you have to be like this, you have to be like that. So yeah, for me, it's one of my favorites. So.
I think the audience is agreeing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we talk about sex, but you are also very connected to the world of the childhood. I mean, you play in Harry Potter series.
Yes.
And can you tell me something about that experience?
Well, I've only done the thing about the Harry Potters is that I only go in and do like 5 days. Do a little bit of, and then I go. So it's not really a sort of important part of my creative endeavour. I'm really sorry, I don't mean to be rude to those of you who like Harry Potter, but, you know, I really came in, did a bit with a lot of glasses and hair, and then left, having been quite well paid. So, you know, I'm very grateful to them, but, yeah, ask me something else.
Absolutely. Because my next question was connected to that. I mean, because you created your own world with the series of Nanny McPhee that you starred and wrote it. So tell me about that, because I think you are very interested in that.
Yeah, I am interested in it. So, okay, Nanny McPhee is a much more important character to me than I realized at the time. I picked the book up. I didn't have children. I picked it up and I thought, that's an interesting character, someone who changes their appearance because of the way they're being seen. And so I thought, that's going to make a very interesting film. Again, it took years to write. But just to go back to my parents for a moment, my father wrote a small thing called The Magic Roundabout, La Manège Enchantée. It was made in France. It was little puppets. And he was sent over these little films, and he wrote the scripts. And they became very, very popular, but not so much with children as with adults. And when he was asked about it, he said, I don't write for children. I think that the whole idea of childhood is a con. Children are just people who haven't lived quite as long as we have. They deserve the same attention to detail. To me, children are the sacred audience. You do your best work for children because they're the ones who will take it with them forever. So he influenced me enormously because I didn't write Nanny McPhee for children. I wrote it for everybody. And it was very important to me that it would reach into everyone. We've just finished 8 years writing the musical of it for the theatre, and it's gone deeper and deeper, and I've suddenly realised that, of course, it's about grief. And I lost my father when I was very young, and I think that she's the thing that I went to comfort myself. And her character, again, she's, shall we say, a kind of crone, an ancient, wise, magnetic thing. She's not human, but she's very female. Her wisdom is very méchant. It's a little bit cativa, you know, it's a little bit mischievous, but it's also very calming. So she's like this magnetic center in the middle of all these iron filings that are moving so fast and they don't know what to do. They're in a state of confusion and disarray. And she comes in and settles everything. And again, I think a lot of particularly old women do that. They're very calming because they've been through so much. Their bodies have changed, everything has passed, and they are in this very... And so that she's so important to me now. And I love the fact also that she connects me to all the generations. So people who have children grew up with her and now show her to their children. And I think that she also gives children a voice. She says their protest is often entirely reasonable, that we need to listen to children when they make their protests. They're not always just being difficult. We're too apt to silence them, I think, still. Yeah, and I think that the way she looks, for me, the mask work, that was wonderful. Oh, I loved doing that. I loved just covering myself up. I still like doing that, actually. Anyway.
Thank you. So, we have a lot of people here for you. So it's time to let them make some questions.
Yes.
So raise your hand here, the first one.
Hi. Can you tell something about your work with Disney, like Saving Mr. Banks or Cruella, for example?
Sure. Saving Mr. Banks was very interesting because actually it connects to the Nanny McPhee question because, of course, Walt Disney and Pamela Travers both wrote characters that were designed to comfort their inner child at the moment when they were in the most pain. You know, Walt Disney, the mouse, comforted him. He had a terrible childhood. Pamela Travers had a terrible childhood, and Mary Poppins was her creation, but the creation that she used to comfort herself. And she was a lot nastier than I played her in real life. I mean, Dick Sherman, who wrote all the songs with his brother, he said, honestly, she was monstrous, absolutely monstrous. So it was very interesting playing somebody deeply unsympathetic, but very creative. And Disney, in that movie and in Cruella, were a very supportive company, actually, and creatively very sort of more laissez-faire than I had expected. And they were great fun films to make. I mean, Banks I found very touching. I found the father issue very touching. You know, the fact that she'd had this alcoholic father who loved her but just couldn't father her, really. So we had a moving and important time making that film. I still like it. I still think it holds up. And Cruella was just, can you imagine how many times I had to get into a wig? And the corsets. And one time when we were making it, we got stuck in a protest in London. We couldn't cross the bridge. And I was in my huge wig and big makeup, and I had to get on the tube. And what was so extraordinary was nobody took any notice at all. I think they thought I was a drag act on the way home from work, because it was the morning. So yeah, I do remember that.
La ragazza là.
Hi, you are amazing, number one. I have two quick questions. Gun to head, your absolute favorite co-star. Male, female, doesn't matter, one. Two, of all the female characters that you've played, which has sapped you completely? Energy, everything that you gave to it? And what's lifted you up out of all the characters?
That's 3 questions.
Oh, yeah.
But
You're
I'm
right.
just pointing it out. No, it's fine. They're all very quick and simple. Okay, what was the first one? Oh, Anthony Hopkins. One of the great actors, but also one of the great humans. The kindest, most generous man. And I've worked with him 3 times now because I played Goneril to his King Lear. So he's also played my father. Yeah, streets ahead. I adored him. But also Daryl McCormack in Leo Grande was extraordinary. He was very brave young man to take that role. Sapped me. This one, Dead of Winter, it nearly killed me. Honestly, I mean, there are moments where I pulled every single muscle in my body, and then I would fall onto the ice, and I had protection, but I didn't know how to fall because I'm not a stunt woman. And I would fall in the wrong way and then be bruised for the rest of the shoot. I mean, that was a tough old shoot. That sapped me completely. I was exhausted at the end of that, but in a good way. And uplifting, I guess, well, probably Nancy in Leo Grande, actually, because she released herself from her self-hatred and found her body and took it back. Yeah.
Grazie Emma. Grazie per essere stata con noi, per la tua umanità e per quello che hai portato al mondo del cinema.